Just so you guys know, this meeting is being recorded. I don't know if you guys also heard that loud voice or if it was just in my subconscious, but Milka Moret uh, is from Northern Virginia. She graduated from William and Mary. Her favorite restaurant is TGI Fridays. She loves socks. And when she was a kid, she took figure skating classes. And that's everything you needed to know about Milka. Milka, if you just real quick want to open up socks, talk us through socks.
Oh, first of all, being barefoot, honestly, worst feeling ever. I think everyone should get on the sock wave. Um, your feet are cleaner, you feel you're warmer, head, hands, and toes keep you warm. I'm such a big sock fan. And I feel like if you wear socks, it'll just uplift your mood. I cannot be the only one out here loving socks as much.
I think it's a little bit on the fringes right now. I think it's you're a little bit extreme, but I think there's some people who I guess like socks. You guys don't be afraid to just comment, I love my bare feet out, bare feet, bare feet, bare feet, in response to anything Milka's saying. But yeah, Milka, how are you? Are you good?
I'm doing well. I'm doing better because I haven't seen a lot of cicadas lately, and it's honestly been the highlight so far of the month of May.
Yeah, shout out all the family here from the East Coast who are fighting the cicadas with us. To all my brothers and sisters and thems, I say, fight hard, fight strong. They were on my scooter in the morning that I was going to use to get to work, and I almost didn't go to work, but we made it. We made it, and we made it. Yeah, I'm really excited about the things that are happening today. I feel like we all know what's happening today, but I'm excited about it. Milka, are you excited?
Oh, 100%. I feel super blessed to be a co-host tonight, and especially the question that we have prepped and our lovely guests. Like, I'm super stoked. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just had a brain fog, but yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. Also, real quick, I can't go past it. I don't know if you, and put this in the chat, if you have seen more than one of these, shout out to you, and we love you. Milka last month had one painting, and this month she got two. I'm proud of you. I am proud of you, best friend. The wall is looking great. The wall is looking amazing. It doubled. Okay, that's 100% increase. And as always, I'm coming to you from the Fully Realized store. This, of course, is the door outside of your subconscious, and I'm just here to give you anything you need. Do you want to get into the run of show just so people know what they're getting into and stuff?
Yes. So for tonight's event, we have, like we said, we have Fatimah Asghar with us, and we're introducing ourselves right now, and we'll soon bring up Fatimah to talk about her poem. And after that, we'll start asking questions focused more on the poetry and her poem, and kind of analyzing kind of her thought process. And we'll have a quick commercial break, and then we'll go into the culture section where we'll ask kind of more personal questions about them, and kind of getting more of an understanding or a fuller understanding of them as a poet. And afterwards, we'll have a cool chop it up section where we'll kind of rapid fire kind of get to know you about them. And at the end of this show, you'll find out who will be our next guest for next month. So I'm super excited. Kenny, are you excited?
I am also excited. I am very excited, I think, for the same reasons as you as well. We have an amazing guest. We have an amazing show. Small logistics. We do have closed captions on for anyone who needs them. So if you were looking at the bottom of the screen, you should see closed captions. We also record these, and they will be available on the LMS site later on. So if you couldn't keep up with the captions this time, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes they be fast. I know I talk fast. So if you want to just watch it later, these will be at some point available later. At some point soon, fingers crossed, is facts. And also, I guess, be respectful in the chat. We love you guys. Don't be mean. We don't like that. So, period. I'm the only one who can be mean. And Milka also can be mean. But I think that's it. Am I missing anything, Milka? Anything else?
No, I think we're ready to get started.
Yes. Okay, great. So let's get into the bio. This bio. Okay, look. Fatimah Asghar is a writer and filmmaker. In 2011, she created a spoken word poetry group in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I know I messed that up. Please, patience. While on a Fulbright studying theater in a post-genocidal countries. She's the writer and co-creator of Brown Girls, an Emmy-nominated web series.
Fatima is also a Ruth, Lily, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellow, and she was also featured on the 2017 Forbes 30 Under 30 list. She's the author of If They Come For Us, published by One World in 2018, and she's the co-editor of Halal If You Hear Me, an anthology that celebrates Muslim writers who are also women, queer, gender nonconforming, and/or trans. So without further ado, please give a warm virtual welcome for our guest, Fatimah Asghar.
Yay! Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Milka. Thank you, Brian and Joseph. I'm super excited. Yeah.
So Fatimah is going to be reading I Don't Know What Will Kill Us First, The Race War or What We've Done to the Earth. And I'll paste the poem in the chat. So Fatimah, whenever you're ready.
Amazing. I don't know what will kill us first, the race war or what we've done to the earth. So I count my hopes. The bumblebees are making a comeback. One snug tight in a purple flower I passed to get to you. Your favorite color is purple, but Prince's was orange, and we both find this hard to believe. Today the park is green. We take grass for granted. The leaves chuckle around us. Behind your head, a butterfly rests on a tree. It's been there our whole conversation. By my old apartment was a butterfly sanctuary where I would read, and two little girls would sit next to me. You caught a butterfly once, but didn't know what to feed it, so you trapped it in a jar and gave it to a girl you liked. I asked if it died. You say you like to think it lived a long life. Yes, it lived a long life.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, give it up in the chat. Obviously, we can't hear everybody at the same time, but yeah, please put all your woos in virtual claps and things like that in the chat. Yeah, so also a good place to start, because we didn't get a lot of time to just talk about it. Fatimah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Yeah. How are you both?
Doing well, doing well.
Is summer treating you with ease and love?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, there's so much happening in the world that's so painful. I think we all have, we're seeing what's happening in Palestine and how painful that is. We're seeing continued police brutality and how painful that is. And, the occupation of Kashmir and all of these things that are happening that are just really tough. But it's really nice to be able to I think something that quarantine did was it made everybody appreciate things that you might have been taking for granted. And so it's really nice to just appreciate things, just wow, the weather is really beautiful today, or I got to hang out with a friend, or small things that are really lifesavers, and it really is very humbling to kind of just be able to be in gratitude of the things that we do have.
No, that's real. And maybe this is a great place to enter into questions. We got a bunch of questions for you. Some answered by audience, some of them are just us because we're curious. But you just mentioned we're just getting out of the pandemic, and this poem was published in poets.org. I think we'll also link it 2 years ago, before the pandemic, or I think definitely before the pandemic. So we're curious, what kind of place were you in writing it, and kind of you already started talking about, but how does that compare to how you are reading it now? What kind of place you're in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wrote this poem, and it was, the thing about this world is that like it, you know, you can feel tension. And so there was like the idea of like us being on the tension and the brink of a race war has been this way for so long. And if you ask the generations before us, it's been that way for so long. Like everybody's like, we're always on the brink of a race war, you know? And so that kind of feeling, I think of like, this is unsustainable. Like we're just really on this brink, I think has existed for a really long time. And so I wrote this like pre the 2020 uprising. And so that was, you know, like it just makes, it's just part of the kind of continuation, I think, of this feeling and of this tension that we living in not only like this country and being on like occupied land in this country, but like across the globe, you know? And then in terms of the pandemic, I think that's something that I feel in pandemic is I grew a lot closer to nature than I ever have been before. Like my relationship to nature, my appreciation of nature is so much higher than it was pre-pandemic. And I think it just, reading this poem now, it's like, whoa, this is a whole different vibe, you know, because of everything that's happened, and just because of thinking about even just like the small noticings of certain things. But I think in a lot of ways, us as poets, like that's so deeply what we do, is like the small noticings of everyday life, the small noticings of what makes life magnificent that might, you know, otherwise pass some other people by if they're not paying attention in that way. But yeah, I think it is really interesting to kind of just think about like how I wrote this, like, you know, it was published in 2019, but I think I might have even written that in 2018. And to see the way that it was, you know, written in 2018, published in 2019, 2020 is when we went into pandemic. We went into uprisings of 2020, and that kind of continued legacy.
Right.
Kind of to follow up on that point, you know, in the poem you say, like, today the park is green, we take grass for granted. And, you know, me and Kenny, we were talking about it, and it really stood out to us, that line, especially because no one even thinks about grass. Like if we're thinking about the environment, it's almost like the forgotten aspect of nature.
Milka was really tripping about, we never think about the grass.
It's so true. Like you're walking on, you're so focused on what's in front of you or what's around you, you don't even realize what you're doing to the land you're even stepping on. And like what gave you like even the introspection to even think about grass? Like what was, like, how did you even, you could have talked about trees, you could have talked about anything, yet you chose grass.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when like it's exactly that. It's like, how often do we look at things that are so overlooked or just take things for granted, where it's like, you know, the grass holds us like every day the grass holds us. And like when you think about why the park is green in so many ways because of the grass. Like it's such a vibrant thing. It's such a vibrant thing to pay attention to, what is underneath us. And when we're thinking about like something, you know, in terms of thinking about developing a relationship to land, like I've lived in cities my whole life. I don't, you know, I remember being young and going to like a summer camp for kids of color, and for, you know, they were like, this is the city, and like, you know, we are here. And then it was like, we had one day where we went to nature and we went camping, and it was like all of us and our camp counselors, and we were in tents. And like I remember we had to learn how to like make a tent in the auditorium, because it was like the place that was big enough in the school to like make it. So we're on the stage learning how to make a tent, like, you know, or how to pitch a tent. And then we all go and we're like, oh my God, we've never been in nature, this is scary, like bugs, like this is really scary, like, you know, and that feeling. And I think that something that is so important is like thinking about how nature is actually around us all the time, right? And it's like, even if there's like a layer of concrete, like there's a grounding core that is trying to connect you to the earth at all times. And so often, especially when you're in a park, like that is so often dirt, soil, grass. Like, you know, it's so often these things that we take for granted. And just thinking, you know, I know Milka, you were saying nobody likes to be barefoot and socks in this thing. I love being barefoot, and I love being barefoot on the grass in particular. There's such a feeling of like what it feels like to have grass like in your toes, and like what it feels like to have them kind of like it climbing up around you, trying to be a part of you, you know, and that kind of feeling is so gorgeous. Like if you can just, to me, you know, I know some people are like, I'm a socks person. Like I can't handle that, you know? But I think when we start to think about the tiny things that we don't think about normally or often like take for granted, but our joys are things that we really appreciate. I think that's really important. And I kept also reading, like my friends are very into, a lot of them are urban farmers and things like that. And something my friend said was that Chicago was going to be very arid, that was kind of the environment that it was moving towards, and in terms of global warming. And I don't really know what arid is. I think I looked it up, and it's like gets very desert like, you know, and I was just like, whoa, what if like all of this grass is replaced by desert? Like what would that look like? And in Chicago, like there's something, I don't know if a lot of you have been in Chicago or around there a lot, but something about Chicago is that there's so much greenery and there's so much grass, and people don't often associate Chicago with that, but it's entirely on a boulevard system. So there's just so many places you can go where it's just grass and trees. And that is like really gorgeous to think about, is like how often actually you see grass. And I was thinking about, wow, what would that look like if we were in an arid environment and there wasn't grass anymore? You know, like how would that feel to be like in this place that I associate with so much greenery and grass, and to not have that be there anymore?
Word. No, I don't think I've ever thought about Chicago and been like, trees, you know. I've also never been there, but like I grew up in this, I think Milka, you grew up in Arlington in the city too. I don't do the woods. I don't even know what the forest is like out there. But I think maybe this is an invitation for all of us to do that, possibly. Speaking of invitations, smooth segue. You talked about, you mentioned in regards to this poem, it felt like things slowed down around you and you were able to put those fears aside and just appreciate what was around. We were curious. Is that also, maybe in a more like general sense, is that also like kind of what you hope to give people with this poem?
Yeah, I think that definitely. So this poem, like, I don't know that if a lot of people clock this. It's so interesting when people talk about your poems, because you know why you wrote them and what moment you were in, but you were like, I don't know if anyone else knows why I was listening. This poem, to me, I wrote when I was like kind of like opening my heart to someone, and like in the early stages of like, ooh, like I'm into you, like I'm super into you, you know. And I'm like, I'm trying to like this moment, those magical moments of like being with someone when you're getting to know them and your heart is opening, and you're like, is your heart opening too? And that feeling of when things slow down, right? And there's so much anxiety. Like it's like that poem, the poem is riddled with anxiety. Like for me, it's like so much anxiety in my life around like race and like this thing, you know, are we safe? Are we not safe? Like, is there a threat to us? Like, things about like, oh my God, environmental collapse, like, just things, all of these anxieties that we have that are there. And then the moment that you're with someone and it just slows the fuck down and you're like, oh man, I can see everything. Like I can see the blades of grass, like I can see the leaves, I can see this thing, I can see the butterfly that's here. And how precious that is, right? How precious that is in a world of anxiety, like people who can slow things down for you, And so the poem is written to slow things down in a lot of ways, because that was the moment that I was in, of that slow down, of like those little like, tickly feelings of like, ooh, I'm into you, and like you're making everything kind of really slow down for me, and what that felt like.
It's so interesting, like hearing you talk about where your head was at when you wrote the poem, because like I was really trying to figure out what is this poem talking about, because like I couldn't tell if it was hopeful, if it was sarcastic, if it was, because like you're talking about how all this is kind of happening, right? But yet nature's also kind of happening around you, and like your actions are intertwined. And so like thinking about the fact that like, right, this person may be giving this butterfly to another person, but also not thinking about what is it like for that butterfly to be trapped. And so I didn't know if you were kind of giving insight as to like how our actions are always impacting nature, whether we intend to, or how impactful or how in some ways destructive, like I guess human behavior can be. So it's just so interesting to see how different, like different interpretations, or not different interpretations, but like how differently I was trying to figure out what was the messaging in between the lines.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that, because this poem in particular of mine, so it has the most different reads. Like I hear people talk about this poem and it's so funny to me, because I'm like, and it's so, and it's just really interesting, like in like what that is, because there's people who are like, oh, but this is clearly a friendship poem. Like this poem's about friendship, you know, or people being like, this is a love poem. This poem's about love, and people being like, this is about environmental collapse and like all of this stuff. And, you know, it's all of these different things that people can attach into. And I think in part it's because it is all of these things, right? Like the thing about like the end, like being like not sure how to read it, and the ending, like, and the destruction of human beings onto nature. It's like, we are nature. Like we are nature. Like we are not separate from the grass. Like we are not separate from the butterfly. It's a real trick of the kind of social conditioning that we're in, that we think we are, you know, and that we think that we're separate from our plant friends, and that we think that we're separate from our insect friends and our animal friends, you know, and that we're separate from each other. And some of that separation is needed, you know, especially as like we're going about our days and things like that. But it's really, we're really part of nature, and it's such a thing. And so even that thing, like what I see in that, when that story is being told of like catching that butterfly, giving it to a girl that the person liked, like this thing, it's an expression of love. Like they were a kid who was like, I love this thing, and you are so precious to me that I want to give you this precious thing. Like, you know, like at the heart of that, that's a beautiful gesture. And also what you're saying is also 100% true. Like you're trapping something, that thing was meant to fly, you're taking it away. Like this is, you know, we're interfering with this thing that was a process, and all of this, which is all 100% true, you know. And it's like love as entrapment, but love also as gift, and love also as this thing. Like all of that is true, because I think that's all of what the big capacity of love is. Like we love, sometimes when you're in a relationship, when you're with someone like that, like sometimes there are moments where you feel trapped. Sometimes there are moments where you feel like you're not sure how you can be your full self and not get trapped up and swallowed up into the love. You know, you want to fly, but you can't, and you want to live, and you don't know if your wings will let you, you know, but also the love is so intoxicating that you don't even know if you can really be out of that, right? Like that is, I think, so much of the condition of that. And I think it is in the anxiety of the poem, you know, and it's not spelled out. It's not, I'm not going to tell you like, you know, what the read on that is, because it's so meant to be about that. It's so meant to be about what the anxiety of that is, and the different feelings, and how someone might look at that as being a trap, and someone might look at that as being free, and someone might look at that as being sarcastic, and someone might look at that as not. Because I think in reality, it's all of it. It's all of it. and that's the kind of complicated thing about I think any feeling that you really examine, you know, is like it has all of these different layers of things.
No, that's really real. And I'm thinking of I remember in high school, shout out high school, there was this idea of like, I forget when it came up, but like how like, especially in our language, there are only like one word for all the feelings we have. But I feel like you're kind of saying like this, just like with poetry, you know, there's so many feelings. There's like feeling vomit almost, where it's like you can't like pick out one, and one is not necessarily disconnected with the other. Super duper profound. Also, because we had this question on there, and please feel free if this makes you uncomfortable to not answer. We had, who are you talking to in this poem? Because it's kind of the you. And now we know there's kind of some tea there. And I'm curious, like, how did that turn out? If we can know that as
That's
listeners.
a great question. Yeah, you can definitely know that. And so also like thinking about, you know, like that kind of like riff on the end of that last question into the segue to this one, like sometimes I read the end of that poem like, yes, it lived a long life, and I believe that butterfly lived forever, you know? And then sometimes I read that poem and then I'm like, that butterfly did not live, you know? Like, ooh, that butterfly lived like one more day, like, you know? And it really is different every time I read it. And so this person was, you know, a friend of mine for a very long time. And then we started talking and dating. And it did not end super well, but it was, you know, it was a thing where like, it taught me a lot. That situation taught me a lot. And there's no denying of the way that I felt in it. You know, there's no denying and of the way that I felt bringing that in. And so I think that the reason that you're picking up on all of this like anxiety in the poem, and also this thing of the slowing down of time, but is it going to work? Is it not? Is because it was in a moment of, is it going to work? Is it not? Like, what's happening? You know, is this, it's a new love, and is it gonna, can we tend to it, especially in the climate we're in the moment we're in the social moment we're in, you know, like, is this a thing that we can tend to? And, you know, what does that look like? So that's the tea, you know, for real.
Okay.
About the poem. Nobody ever asks me that about who is the you know, but that's the real tea about that poem.
I'm glad we did that. And it's funny too, because I think we were asking it as like, you know, like you used a vague you in this, like, but it's so much more interesting now that we have like, like, I feel like you could have been like, oh, the you is kind of esoteric or whatever, but no, that was the best. I think that was the best way that could have gone. Also, I'm kind of curious.
The you is a very specific person who also, when I was like, I wrote a poem about you, never wanted to read the poem. I was like, okay, cool, that's fine.
Yo,
I'm not heartbroken.
Pardon
You're
me.
You're real.
I'm very much like, okay, because Fatimah, famous poet. Do you ever feel anxiety about writing a poem about somebody, or like a love poem, knowing that like later on, like, here's this love poem that I wrote about you that is like lives in the world, even though it didn't really work out?
That's a really good question. I don't feel that anxiety because to me, I literally like write, like it's part of the way I speak. Like if you're in relationship with me, it's like something that you will know about me is that like I write as a way of communicating. Like it's really truly like like, you know, people are poems because I'm trying, no, like for me, I'm like this is how I feel, you know? And so it's like, these are the ways that I feel about this thing. I might not have like a word or a definition, but this is the way I felt in this moment. And so to me, writing is such a part of being in relationship. It's not even in any kind of relationship, like friendship, you know, all of that, it's really there. And it's a marker of time. And so it's like, I have poems that are out there that are chronicle so many different moments in relationships, so many different moments and times I've thought about stuff. And that's just what it is. And the thing that's interesting now, which is different, is that I notice now that it's like like a, how do I say this? It's like, if I share a poem with someone, now they're like, they're like, whoa, poem, like, you know, and I think that, whereas like I think like, you know, in my early 20s when I first was writing, people were like, cool, you were a poet, like, you know, it was a different vibe. And I'm like, whoa, that's so interesting now that like I see a shift in that. Now you guys just know a lot about my personal life, but
this is what
we appreciate you. Fatimah, I don't know how you did it, but somehow like I'm even more in love with this poem. Oh my God, thank you. I think we all need a little bit of time to just kind of soak in the glory of what you've just given us. And this is perfect timing to kind of segue in. Joseph Green will be giving highlights about what LMS is up to this month. So thank you, Joseph.
Hi, Joseph.
Hey, Joseph. Hello, Joseph?
Muted. I'm sorry. I just realized that. I'm working on it. I've been in Zoom rooms my entire day and messing it up my entire day. But I just wanted to start by saying thank you for being here and gracing us with your presence. We are always so shocked and amazed when one of the people that we look up to says, yeah, we'll come and chat with you. And so thank you for being here. Announcements, real quick. I'm going to get in and get out because I want to get right back to this conversation. But I wanted to start by saying that if you stick around to the end of this conversation, we will be announcing next month's guest the same way we did last month. So please stick around because it is another amazing poet to lead off our summer series, as it were, and that is very exciting. We have some new material that will be going up on the LMSVoice website in June. So if you are not on our email list, please go to lmsvoice.com, get on our email list, sign up for the free curriculum that this event is based off of. And we are adding new curriculum every month. Why? Because we think it's important for people to have access to these tools. We all have different things that we do to make a living, but there are a lot of people out there who are trying to use words as a way to increase the amount of communication and empathy and shared knowledge in this world. And we are just super excited to be one really small part of that. So if you have young people out there, if you work with other educators, if you know somebody who would be interested in our material, send them an email, make sure they get on the email list. And our video series, finally, after 6 months in the making, our video series, our first season is ready to go, and it will be premiering in June. It will be 4 video workshops called the After Series. We have local poets, national poets who have volunteered their time to share one of their poems and then lead us in a workshop to write an after poem based off of their poem. So that is coming out and we are super excited because it has taken forever. We recorded these back in like October, but it's coming, it's happening. And that is your announcements. Please, I'd like to bring back to the space our amazing hosts who are doing a wonderful job and our very, very special guests. Thank you for your time. We'll see you at the end.
Thanks, Joseph. Also, just want y'all to know, Joseph didn't breathe once while doing all of this. That was on one breath the whole time. So clap it up for Joseph. We love Joseph.
Cheers.
Lungs are built different. Each one. He's got like 3. Okay, let me but real quick before we like finish the commercial-ish part, we also just want to lift up our amazing teacher who you've enjoyed so much. You can follow them on social media at Asghar the Grouch. We're gonna put that in the chat just in case you're like me and you just need a copy and paste, but that's Asghar the Grouch. They also have a website that's just their name, which is always the best. So just go to FatimahAsghar.com. They have a bunch of books out. If they come for us, one of my favorite books, poetry books of all time. And then Halal If You Hear Me, which was done in collaboration with another one of our friends who was actually in the in the LMS chat as well, Safia El Hilo, and we love them. Also, the Emmy-nominated Brown Girl web series. We're gonna put the site for that in the chat. Go look at all these things. Go do it. You got time. You know, you see it. Get the books, do the things, and I think that's it. Milka, am I missing anything?
No, and Ken, you should be proud of me because I was copy and pasting as fast as I could.
I saw you were everything. I want y'all to know Milka's, like, if it doesn't seem like Milka's working really hard, Milka's doing 1,000%. I was talking, and as I spoke, every word I spoke was getting highlighted and copied into the thing. So we love you, Milka. But I think we're ready to get back into more.
Yes. So Fatima, thank you so much. We're ready to kind of get to know you more and kind of zoom out from the poem and kind of get to know more about you as a poet and as a person. And so I think the first question that I want to start off with is, you know, when you began to write poetry, you know, and other forms of creative works, did you ever receive like a lot of pushback? And if so, like, how did you handle such pushback?
Can you elaborate more?
Yes, so I think that like you in my mind, right, you pioneer so many topics and very necessary discussions, and you tackle systems of oppression, and oftentimes this can probably leave people in can feel uncomfortable, especially if they participate in these kinds of behaviors. And so ever kind of receive pushback, whether it was from people, friends, maybe people that just disagreed with you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have in many different kinds of ways. And so when I like, you know, there's been a lot of different phases and a lot of different moments of this, right? And so there's definitely, when I first started writing, or when I was first like writing about, like, I read a lot about sexuality and a lot about sex and about body and about things. And being Muslim, that there's often been pushback from like people who are like, that's not what it means to be Muslim, and like, you're not really Muslim, and you're like a whore, and all of these things. And I remember there was like one moment where like I had written something, or there was a poem, I think, of a video of me, and there was all these comments of people who were just like, you know, being like some of the most vile shit, just, you know, about my body and about like me being a Muslim person and a Muslim femme and stuff. And it just was this moment where I was just like, you know, like, I was just like, A, don't read the comments, and then B, just being like, what does it mean though to silence your truth? Like, would I rather fit into something that doesn't make space for who I am and my authenticity, or would I rather push back against that, right? On the opposite, you also have like, when I'm like talking about Islamophobia, and then there's all these like people who are like, well, I'm just saying very similar things, and they're just like, you know, coming at me in that way too, and then just being like, no, because I'm not going to praise the West as like the place to be, you know, or like this is like, you know, I think people really sometimes want Muslim femmes to have that narrative of like, the West gave us freedom and I can be free because here, and it's like, no, like I can't, like that's so not true, you know. And then I also think that like and I'm sure for so many of us, it's like, as you move through the world, like you see injustices or you see things happen, then you call it out and then you get pushback. Like I dropped out of my MFA program, and it was for so long, like the way that I had heard people talk about the MFA was that the MFA was the only way to be a writer. It was the only way to be a poet, like to be a sustainable poet. And I was like, oh, bet, like, I guess that's the only way. I guess I have to go to this program. And I was just very surprised by how like there was whiteness at every level of the programming and every level of the educational structure. Like, it's so wild to me to be in a place that's about cultivating the love of poetry and to not talk about the love of poetry at all, to talk about poetry purely technical based, to have people kind of insinuating that there's like, oh, like the, you know, the reason some writers are popular is because they're identity poets and they write about identity, you know, like stuff like that. And I was just like, yo, this is racist. This program is racist. There's things that they're doing that are not based in care and that are not based on the productivity or how to cultivate a relationship with poetry, which in a lot of ways is cultivating a relationship with your own spirit, your own intuition, your own inner voice, and your own noticing, right? Like, you can't have art devoid from that, or you have imitation. I don't know how you do that, you know? And I'm not saying that on a religious bent. I'm saying that on like a way of being like, there is an act of creating that is miraculous and informed by a certain kind of relationship that everybody is capable of having with spirit. I don't know how we live in an institution where we don't talk about art that way, where we talk about art purely as a technical form. That shit makes no sense to me and is supremely white. Like, I'm just like, I don't get that, like, you know? And so when I was saying stuff about my MFA program, I got a lot of pushback, and it was because people were like, this makes our MFA, this makes us look bad, blah, blah, blah. Like, there was a lot of like respectability shit in there. And it was respectability people from people I loved. It was from mentors that I loved, you know? And I had to just be like, that, like, I realized I could have said this differently. And I realized also in this moment, I'm being traumatized. Like, we all have trauma from living in a white supremacist society, and I'm being triggered in this moment, and maybe could have handled this better. And also, this is still a white supremacist institution that I don't fuck with. Like, that should be allowed to be said, you know, like that, without kind of like, then being like, you know, all of this stuff coming down. And so I think that, you know, there's been so many moments of things like that in terms of like, just in my life in poetry and in community in poetry that I care so deeply about being like, I love this. And also this thing is like, I'm not good with, like, I can't fuck with that. And we need to have a conversation about it, you know, because we are trying to make a space where everybody is safe. And what does it mean to you know, safety in some ways is such a big question of what does that mean to have safety, but and like safety for who and safety for what, but like if you're trying to build an interdependent community where you have everybody who's able to come, especially marginalized people, then we need to have some conversations about the way that our society is structured and the way that these things filter out in our spaces, you know? And again, it doesn't need to be from an attacking place, and it doesn't need to be from like a, you know, like victimizing place and victimhood and that person's a villain, like the binary system, but we need to have it, you know, we need to have that because that's what it means to be in solidarity with each other. And so I've definitely gotten pushback, not only in terms of the things I've written, but in terms of the way that I conduct myself in spaces and the ways that I try to be like, I'm not cool with that. We got some pushback for halal, if you hear me, you know, definitely have gotten pushback for things and if they come for us and for things like that. And it's just, to me, I'm like, listen, are there moments that I could have been better or I could have learned more, I could have, sure, you know, but that is also a marker of where I'm at in a particular moment. That's what poetry is. It's not about being perfect, because again, that's also a certain kind of like white supremacist concept, but like I am fiercely protective of everybody in halal, if you hear me. Like I haven't even met a lot of these people, but I feel fiercely protective, including people who have to use pseudonyms, because it is so difficult to live your truth. It's so difficult to be who you are. And if you can't be who you are at all moments of every day, that doesn't make your truth invalid, you know? And I think that, sorry, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but it's just like, how do we create the spaces that are safe for everybody and continue to make the world safer so that people can live in their truth and not be trapped by ideas that are harmful, that are deeply harmful for us, you know? And if that means that I write some stuff or I edit a book or I do something that has people who like don't like me, then that's what it means. You know, I'm not for everybody and I'm not meant to be. None of us are, and that's okay. And even with brown girls, like there's so much shit that people projected onto that. There's so much shit. And like we would be at like events and there would be people who were like, well, think about what your grandma would say. And I was like, what? Like, you know, it was like just so much stuff about, you know, internal like homophobia that was coming out. So much stuff about people being like, Layla hates her religion. Like when they would talk about the show, I was like, since when? Like, when did she ever say or allude to hating her religion? Like that's your projection that you're putting onto this, you know? There were so many things that people were kind of just reading in, and something you have to get good at is just being like, that's someone else's projection. You know, that's not who I am, and that's not what this thing is saying. And like, people are reading this thing from wherever they're at, you know, and if that comes from a place that's based in some ignorance, then like that's the way that they're going to read the thing. You know, you can't like convince them to get out of that in that way.
Period.
Like, what can we do? Like, what can we do?
Yeah, I felt like, it's funny. I don't know if you saw us, but when you were like, I hope I'm not talking too long, me and Milka were just, no. Keep it rolling. No, I think that was perfect. Milka, do you have more questions?
Yeah. So like, I know you were talking about like a lot of solidarity work, and, you know, like speaking of brown girls and halal, if you hear me, like, you know, you a lot of your work kind of emphasizes kind of community amongst women of color. And I was kind of intrigued to know, like, do your efforts come from the fact that you saw a lot of that in your own personal life? Or was it something you always wanted for there to be more community, and this is why you invested so much of these themes in your work? Yeah, that was kind of a big question I was thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a hybrid for me, because for me, my parents died when I was really young. And so I've always had a very unconventional idea of what family is. Like I was raised by people who were blood, who are not blood, you know, and it's that thing that I think every time I talk to people of color and immigrants, everybody understands this when they're like, oh, that's my auntie, but that's not really my auntie, and she raised me. Like that's this person, they're not really this thing, but they raised me. Like everybody gets it. And then there are the people who don't get it. I'm like, oh, like you're living in a very this idea of like what a nuclear family is, and that like this structure is like exists in terms of like what family is, like, you know. And to me, it's always been this thing where like growing up in my neighborhood, I had 4 best friends or 3 best friends, there's 4 of us, including me. And all of our families knew each other. And it was like, we knew each other since we were kids. We were in a very interdependent family. When I go home, my friends' parents, they're like, that's my daughter when they talk about me. Like, they were like, oh yeah, like your book was in the store. And I was like, that's my daughter's book. Like, that's my daughter's book. Like that. And they're, you know, that's what I grew up in, you know, and we all were of different races. And it was a thing of just being like, that's what it meant to be in community. It was like, we, you know, bring our stuff and you bring yours and we're here. And like, you know, that's what it is. And so to me, I kind of really grew up needing community because I didn't have parents and because I grew up in a really abusive home. And so for me, it was like, that was a savior. That was the thing that saved me. So moving forward, it was a thing where I was like, I need community because my own sense of like belonging and love, like I just really deeply needed it. And I think it's the only way to make anything happen. Like, you know, for me, like when I remember I wrote a chapbook, right? Like I wrote a chapbook before or after. It was like a chapbook that I had that was like Kinko stapled. Nobody bought that. Like literally nobody was buying that. Like, you know, and it was like the people who bought that were my friends. Like literally, I remember Hanif buying my chapbook for $5 when Hanif was my friend. Like we're still friends, but like was my, you know, where nobody knew, nobody cared who the fuck we were, and nobody was checking for us. And Hanif was like, I'll buy your chapbook. How'd you write that poem? And I was like, how did you write that poem? Like that's what we did, you know? And it was like literally everybody in my friend group, like that's what we were doing, was we were buying each other's chapbooks, and nobody was publishing us. Nobody cared. Nobody was checking for us, you know? And so there was a way where we were really depending on each other, and we would be like, cool, like if I can get $30, I could take the megabus to the Twin Cities and I can perform and sleep on Dinez's couch, and I can perform at the show that Dinez runs, and I could maybe make $50. So I'll maybe make $20 off the trip, you know, like hopefully someone will buy me Wendy's. Like that was like what it was, you know? And it was that kind of a thing, is like how we loved the form, and we were connected through the love of this craft to the love of each other, you know? And it was like a continued kind of way of building. And filmmaking, you can't make film alone. There's no world where you can make film alone. And so film is a collaborative effort at its base. And I think that something that I've really been thinking is like, how do you build community, interdependent community, and how do you really acknowledge that collaboration is a divine exchange. It's an exchange, and it's a relationship of people. That is what collaboration is, right? And so, you know, we corporatize all this stuff, and it becomes a thing of like ego and blah, 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 and hierarchy and whatever. And it's really not that, you know, it's really not. And so to me, like the only thing worth doing is worth doing with people, and it's worth doing with people that you care about, that you want to build a relationship, that you want to get closer to, that you want to love, and just to see what that's like. Like I pray that I live a life of art and love and collaboration. Like I pray that that's what I get to do for my life, because that is the life I want, you know, like in whether it's on a small scale or not. Like, you know, but it's kind of this thing of just being like, that to me is the heart. And it's what moves me, and it's where I really, really deeply believe in. And also to say that community is flawed. Like community means we have fucking issues, you know, and that we need to figure it out, you know, and that it's not all peaches and us all laughing together. And it's hard, but also like it's the only sustainable force against the nation state, is to build this kind of thing where you deeply love each other, you deeply show up for each other, and people are deeply not disposable, you know, which means that we have to kind of come with a certain rigor in ourselves, you know, a certain rigor in what it means to be ourselves and what it means to show up to the table with each other, and to not then to come like ready, you know, and this is like and to come wanting to repair. And this is what every like, you know, abolitionist talks about, is like, that's what like, you know, you hear like brilliant like abolitionists talk, like Miriam Kaba and all these people, and this is what they're talking about, is building interdependent community, right? And so to me, that's what community is. Like, it's not like something of just like, oh my God, this is all peaches and whatever, and da, 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 da. It's like, it's really hard work and it's a lot of labor, and you have to build it. You have to come as an active participant. You can't just fall into community. And that is just really, really important. Sorry, I know I talked a lot. And not to.
Fatima, like, thank you. Like, I feel like hearing this is so amazing. You really do depict like this sense of community and what we can strive for and what we should look for within our relationships with other people through your poetry. So I know we're super appreciative of just kind of how much you give us insight about your thought process, about how we can do better and be better towards one another, and like create good community, create quality community, I feel. And so I think this is a good segue into our last section for the night, which is the chop it up portion of LMSchat. Kenny, you want to start us off with some lighthearted get to know you questions for Fatima?
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, our chop it up section is a chance to get to know the real Fatima. After this, you will know their spirit, and that is the goal. It's not that deep, but it is that deep. Which question do I want to start with? Okay, question, Fatima. Which of the 8 planets would you kick out so that Pluto can come back?
Oh my God, that's so hard. I have to kick out a planet?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like, ow. Oh my God, ow. Okay. Oh, no, I really can't kick that one out. Oh my God, it's really hard. And all of the, like, everyone's gonna be mad at me. And by everyone, I mean the planets. Oh. Maybe Neptune.
Wow.
She's like,
waits for lightning to strike.
oh my God.
Word. Shout out all the people who love Neptune. We're ready for your hate in the chat. Milka, your turn.
Okay, so I think a good next follow-up question would be, darn, I don't know. These are all kind of really good. What's your favorite unconventional food pairing? Like hummus with apples or something like
when I was a kid, I used to mix like Coke and milk.
What? Please repeat that. Oh my gosh, how was it?
It's good.
Really?
It's good. It's kind of like a root beer float. It's really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a part of me is like, I feel like that's a thing, but I think my spirit was also like, no.
Everybody's like, that's disgusting, but it's really good. Try it.
No, I definitely will.
You have to figure out what your ratio is.
Okay.
Especially the chat is talking about it too. I must be late to the game.
Yeah, Milka is gonna try it for the LMS chat, and then we'll deliver back there.
Great.
Okay. Next question. What movie do you feel like exists and you feel like would be awesome if they made it into a musical? Like, considering it would be like a perfect musical, not like a bad one.
A really good musical?
It's gonna be a really good musical.
Oh, I think Brink. Do you guys remember Brink from? Y'all are probably too young.
Wait, no.
Man.
Am I?
The roller skating movie on Disney?
Oh yeah, no, I don't know.
Wait, when did it come out? I'm gonna have to.
Like in the 90s. Is anybody here knows Brink? Anybody? Nobody knows Brink?
Yo.
Oh,
in the chat, please put if you know Bring.
No, one person knows Brink. One person.
Hey, look at. Hey, we appreciate you, Stu. Building community here. I truly don't. It's funny. I thought you were saying the cheerleading movie Bring, like Bring It On, but that's
Brink.
That's totally different.
No,
you guys should watch it. It probably doesn't hold up, to be honest, but it was one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Oh,
I definitely think 90s Disney was the best era. I think it just kind of went downhill from there, but you know,
Yeah.
good choice. I'll check it out. I think our last one would be describe yourself in one word.
Ooh, it's gonna be, well, I think I'm deeply misunderstood. That's my word.
That's a good word.
Such a broody
Bunch of
emo
hype.
answer.
Deeply misunderstood. And then the little face where it's like an X and a like sad face. It's like, no one gets me. I'm not.
No one gets me.
Thank you, Jen. We try with these questions.
Yeah, Jen said y'all are asking tough questions. That's what we do. That's what we do here. But we are
Love it.
at the end of our show. Thank you so much, Fatima. But before we all go, I guess Brian is about to come up and tell us, Brian, who's going to be here next month taking these amazing questions?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you, Fatima, for joining us tonight. We enjoyed hearing from you. And again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. Actually, Kenny, can you do me a favor? Can you highlight, spotlight Joseph as well?
Yeah, I don't know who unspotlighted me so rudely.
It wasn't
that really,
me, I promise. So, but anyhow, next month our guest is going to be Clint Smith. So we are excited to have him join us. Clint, yes, he is a good friend of ours, and we're happy to have him come back and join us on the chat. So, Joseph, is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
I would like to add my sincere gratitude for our amazing host knocking it out of the park again, our amazing guest who just made this so easy and effortless with all of your amazing commentary and beautiful ideas. I can't wait to share this with other people. Thank you so much for gracing our space. And I would say one thing to everybody who is out there, please interact with us. If there's somebody you really want to see that's in our curriculum that you would like us to reach out to, there's a contact page on our website. Let us know. We're curious. We're going to be doing this for a while, and so we want to make sure that we are bringing in folks that you are still going to be super excited about when we're doing this time next year. And with that, please continue to take care of yourself. It is real out there, so that we can keep taking care of those in our community. Have a great night, everybody.
Hey, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Go buy Fatima
Thank you,
stuff.
Fatima.
Halal, if you hear me, if they come for us, and of course the Emmy nominated Brown Girl web series, go watch it. And yeah, everybody have a nice night.
Bye.
Bye.